Some stories stay hidden in the hallways. Others fade away with the final bell. But a few stay trapped between stacked chairs, flickering lights, and locked doors. These 3 stories were never told at assemblies. They weren't shared in parent group chats. They were lived in silence. And maybe you're only hearing them now because someone finally opened the wrong door. If you've ever felt like a school could hide something darker than just test scores and hallway drama, you're exactly where you need to be. Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever gone through a lockdown that wasn't just a drill? If yes, or if one of these stories stirs something you thought you'd already buried, leave a comment. Sometimes all it takes is knowing you weren't the only one. Hit the like button. Share this video with someone who still thinks schools are always safe. And subscribe to the channel. The next stories might be closer than you think. You never notice the sound your name makes until it stops being said. The teacher read the entire list, letter by letter, room by room. Amanda, Chase, Danielle, and somehow I wasn't there. Not forgotten, just skipped, like I'd never existed. During the October evacuation drill, that's what happened. And standing at the end of the hallway, my hands sweating inside my hoodie pocket, I realized it wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice. The way the entire school, teachers, students, even the security staff made me invisible without meaning to. And in that moment, I swear, something inside me decided that if my name wasn't going to be called, someone would have to remember the silence I left behind. I wasn't exactly the weird kid. No tattoos scratched into my arm, no whispering to myself in the cafeteria. I just existed, quiet in a way that made people comfortable, like background noise you don't question. I wore the same 3 shirts on rotation, faded gray, a navy one with the school mascot, and a black one I found in the Lost and Found. I always sat in the second row, close enough to hear everything, far enough to be forgotten. People knew my face, but only as the guy who always had a spare pen or a printer login, the kind who helps you submit your paper but doesn't get invited to the group chat after the quiz. My mom worked night shifts at the regional hospital and sometimes slept in the car between rotations. I learned to cook my own dinner by 13, which meant my lunch always smelled like leftovers and plastic. No one made fun of me, but no one noticed me either. Not really. I was polite silence, the kind of silence that fills up a chair but not a memory, the kind that's easier to ignore. Amy Holloway wasn't cruel, at least not the kind of cruel you see in movies. She smiled before answering, wore mismatched earrings like it was intentional, and always seemed to know how to say hi without actually meaning it. She had a different bracelet every week, a new keychain on her bag every month, and that laugh people echo even if they don't get the joke. The first time I talked to her was by accident. In line at the media center, she dropped her science fair badge and I caught it before it hit the floor. She took it from my hand without touching me and said thanks, like you thank someone for passing the salt. The next day, during biology, she told the class I nearly tripped over her trying to flirt. She laughed. The others laughed. Even the teacher chuckled. I laughed, quietly. But something inside me folded inward, like a zipper splitting along the seam. That night, I wrote her name in the back of my notebook. Just her name. But I wrote it 3 times, just to remember the shape of it. The school scheduled the evacuation drill on a cloudy Tuesday before lunch. It was announced through the loudspeaker with that hollow, robotic voice. All teachers, please escort your students to designated zones. Everyone knew the routine. Line up, stay quiet, exit through the north stairwell, gathered by the fence. No one takes it seriously. It's just a game. I followed my class like always. I stood in the far left corner of the field like I always did, arms crossed, head down, counting the ants crawling through the fence gap. And then, the roll call started. Name after name, loud, fast, no pauses. When the teacher got to Holloway, Amy, she raised her hand and smiled. When he reached the end, he just said, "All accounted for." But I had never been called. Not even a hesitation, not a second glance, nothing. And the worst part wasn't being skipped. It was realizing no one noticed. No one looked around to find me. No one thought the silence behind row 4 meant anything. And maybe it didn't. Maybe I really wasn't there. I could have said something, raised my hand. "Hey, you missed me." But I didn't. Because I realized silence has power, a different kind of control. If they could pretend I wasn't there while I stood among them, then I could show them what it meant to be present in all the wrong ways. I started moving slower through the hallways, timing exits, counting the seconds between one bell and the next class starting. 43 seconds of emptiness. I logged everything in a soft-cover notebook hidden behind my US history textbook. It wasn't a plan. Not yet. Just the reversed version of their drill. They pretended to prepare for the worst. I was just proving the worst was already inside. Sitting quietly, second row, seat 3, room 213. I became an expert in routine. I knew the janitor locked the supply closet at 2:17 p.m. sharp, always double turning the knob. I knew the security room had a blind spot. The area between the water fountain and the bulletin board took 3 extra seconds for the rotating camera to sweep. I knew on Fridays the front entrance monitor took an extended break to call her son's school, as she always said loudly. While others crammed for geography tests, I walked the exact number of steps between the art room and locker 264, mine. Not that anyone noticed. I never opened it during passing period. Inside, I kept a thick hoodie with a deep hood and zippered lining. Nothing illegal, no weapon, no blade, but I folded it like they fold flags at military funerals. And each time I touched it, I imagined how long people would look if I walked the hallway wearing it on the wrong day, at the exact right time. The following Monday, the air felt heavier, like something unspoken was about to rupture. Third period, chemistry. The teacher was explaining endothermic reactions when the intercom glitched for 3 seconds. A pop, a static click, then silence. No one cared, except me. I stared at the cracked speaker in the corner like it had winked. Outside, a student ran, holding his phone screen inward, and for one moment, everyone's head turned. The collective heartbeat of the room surged, then settled when nothing followed. But I kept watching. That snapped reaction, that instinctive fear, that was everything I needed. They were trained to flinch, trained to fear breaks in the script. And that day, I decided I'd be the broken line. Not with violence, but with presence, with absence, with everything they never expected.
It was fourth period when the lights flickered. I was in the upstairs bathroom, washing my hands too slowly, watching the foam spiral into the drain like time itself was slowing down. Then the voice came over the intercom, not sharp, not loud, just dragged out and cold. Lockdown. This is not a drill. The phrase repeated twice. Doors slammed shut, feet scurried. Hallways collapsed into echo chambers. I already knew what would happen. Classrooms would lock from the inside, lights would go dark, teachers would huddle kids into corners. The whole school would become a frozen body, hoping not to be touched. I stood in the hallway with the hoodie over my arm, shoes squeaking on linoleum. This wasn't random. This was the part of the story no one wanted to hear. The one without bullets. The one with breath. The second floor stretched long in the dark. The motion sensors tried and failed to bring the lights back on, flickering like nervous eyelids. I moved slowly. The hoodie was on now, hood low over my face. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, intentional, like it knew this rhythm before I did. I stopped in front of room 213, the same room, the same row, Amy's window seat. The projector was still glowing through the half-drawn blinds. I saw shadows, figures hunched down, a forehead pressed against the drywall. They saw me. I knew they did, but no one moved. The room was locked, just like protocol said, and I was the flaw in protocol, the anomaly. I raised my hand, knocked 3 times. Not hard, not fast, just like the drill. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. I waited, giving them the chance to fix what they forgot, but they didn't. And I smiled, because this time I was the one thing they couldn't unsee. I stood there longer than anyone should have, my own silence pressing against my eardrums like water. I could hear shallow breathing inside the room, a stifled sob, the rubber squeak of someone shifting their shoe. Amy was there. I knew it. Her messy bun was visible through the blinds, catching the light just enough. She was shaking. And for one long second I paused, not out of regret, out of certainty. This was it. The presence. The moment I was finally being felt. The name never said out loud. The present never answered. I placed the notebook gently on the floor, spine facing the door. The same one with all the names I remembered. And the last one, on the last page, was mine. Then I turned, walked away down the hall, took off the hoodie while the alarm still echoed and sirens approached. When I passed the security camera near the cafeteria, I looked straight into the lens for the first time. The school went back to normal 2 days later, as if normal was something you could just return to. No weapons were found, no threats were made. The principal sent out an email calling it a false alarm and precautionary. But Amy knew. And when she opened her backpack in English class and saw the notebook tucked between her textbooks, she didn't say a word. She just closed it gently, like it held something too personal to share. The notebook vanished, and so did my name. No mention on announcements. No emails, no eye contact in the hallways. But I was still there. Second row, third seat. Present. Silent. And this time, impossible to ignore.
They never actually told me I was fired. They just stopped answering my emails. My badge stopped working before I even knew what was happening. A week later, I got a letter from HR. Cold, vague, printed on recycled paper like firing me was some kind of environmental gesture. Theft of custodial supplies, unprofessional conduct in restricted areas. That's how they put it. And all I did was ask for a second roll of trash bags because the first kept tearing. I worked at that school for 4 years, never called in sick, never asked for anything but respect. But once Assistant Principal Rosalind Pierce decided my tone made people uncomfortable, I was erased. Now every time I pull into the school parking lot with the third-party delivery van, I see the same building, the same hallways, only from the outside. And no one ever wonders if the people outside still remember what they saw inside. It wasn't about breaking in, and it wasn't about hurting anyone. Never was. I didn't want revenge like in the movies. No yelling, no blood, no news headlines. I just wanted her to look at me for a full minute. I wanted Rosalind Pierce with her perfect hair and heels that echoed like clockwork to pause, take a breath, and realize who I was. To remember the back room, the day she walked in without knocking and said my voice was too aggressive for a school environment. All I did was ask for more garbage bags. I spoke fast because I had to clean 3 bathrooms in 15 minutes. The school taught me to be fast, then punished me for it. They shut off my badge like I was dead, cut off access like I'd never existed. So now, every time I passed through that parking lot in a fresh uniform and a different company van, I felt something knot in my stomach, like the building was spitting me back out. What they didn't know was that I still remembered how to get in, still knew the schedules, the blind spots, the broken locks, and more importantly, I remembered her face, but she'd have to remember mine. I walked through the side gate like I never left. The sensor still had that 1-second delay before the latch clicked, just long enough to hold your breath and remember that nothing in that building was ever designed to feel welcoming. The front desk assistant was on the phone with her back turned and didn't even glance up when I scanned the fake badge. I didn't need an excuse. Delivery people pass through all the time. I took the service stairs because I knew the elevators jammed during class transitions. The hallway still smelled the same: cheap disinfectant, laminated paper, and fear dressed up as routine. The tiles echoed like always. Each step felt louder than it should. Every hallway I turned down, something inside me hardened. I was inside, and so was she. I spotted Rosalind near the admin offices. Same blazer, leather folio, phone in her left hand, walking like she had somewhere more important to be. She passed less than 6 feet from me and didn't flinch. Or maybe she saw me and chose not to. Her world ran on hierarchy. If your badge doesn't scan green, you're invisible. But someone did see me. A student with a red backpack and one earbud hanging loose. He walked by fast, glanced at me for half a second, and froze at the end of the hallway. I stayed still, holding an empty cardboard box like it was part of me. The kid looked again, pulled out his phone, typed something, and slipped around the corner. 2 minutes later, the emergency light started flashing. A tinny voice filled the intercom. "This is a lockdown. Please secure all classrooms." It wasn't because of me, not directly, but I knew what that kid saw. A delivery uniform, with no package in sight. The locks snapped shut with a sound I knew too well. Not a comforting click, the kind that says something's been contained, the kind that says you're not going anywhere. Rosalind darted into the nearest classroom without looking up from her phone, not noticing I was right behind her. When the door shut, she turned. We were face to face for the first time since it all happened. The projector was still on, casting pale light across the whiteboard. She squinted. There was a badge on my chest, but the face didn't match. Recognition was slow, like a photo emerging from chemical bath, but it came. She didn't speak, just backed up against the opposite wall and slowly slid down to the floor. I set the box on the desk and sat too. Neither of us touched the door, neither of us called for help. The system would keep us locked in for 20 minutes, and for 20 minutes, she'd have to remember. I never stole anything. My voice came out low but steady. She didn't answer, didn't blink, just kept her arms crossed, eyes fixed on the wall beside me, like even the smallest reaction would validate what I'd just said. All I did was ask for time, for supplies, for basic respect, and you turned that into a warning. Her lips pressed tight, not with anger, but with discomfort.
Rosalind Pierce was an expert in neutral expressions. That was her gift, silencing people with polite nothingness. But today, her stillness felt like retreat. "You don't even remember what you said, do you?" I asked her. "You said my presence made people uneasy, that I was too intense, that the way I walked freaked others out." I stared at her, directly this time. "Now you're locked in here with me. Tell me, are you scared?" She opened her mouth, closed it, looked down, and for a second I felt something I didn't expect. Pity. Not for her, for me, for ever thinking this moment would be enough. When the lockdown system disengaged, the release was barely audible, just a sharp metallic click followed by the soft hum of electricity returning. Emergency lights blinked off. Technically, things could return to normal. But inside that room, nothing had stayed the same. Rosalind didn't stand right away. She just sat there like she wasn't sure what came next. I was already on my feet, back turned, adjusting the empty box like someone arranging flowers at a grave. Before leaving, I placed a folded brown envelope on her desk. No return address. Inside was my original badge, the real one, the one they thought they had deactivated. I'd kept it. Maybe as proof, maybe as a scar. No one stopped me as I walked out. No one even looked twice. The whole school was still recovering from the scare. I climbed into the van, shut the door gently, like I didn't want to wake anyone. 2 weeks later, the school received a package with no sender. Inside was my old custodial uniform, folded with military precision. No letter, no threat, just the uniform and the faint scent of bleach, the same one she once said made her nauseous. It never made the papers. No memo ever mentioned a lockdown. Officially, it was a precautionary response to an observed irregularity. No names, no follow-up. But the staff knew. Rosalind started locking her office even when she was alone, switched to flats, arrived early, left late. Someone once caught her scrubbing her own name off the door placard with alcohol and a rag, only to replace it with a cleaner version, as if the problem was in the ink. No one spoke of the former custodian again, but every Friday, someone found a plain brown envelope left quietly on the desk in the back office, always empty. No note, no message, just a reminder that sometimes what haunts the most is what returns without saying a word.
Does your school have a visiting room? Not the one for parent-teacher meetings, I mean the forgotten one, with plastic blue chairs and flickering lights even when no one's there. Ben was the janitor. Graying hair, clean record, no scandals. Just a normal man. But it was in that room he decided one student needed him more than any other adult ever had. And during a lockdown no one really understood, the boy ended up exactly where Ben wanted him, with him. Ben had worked at the school for 9 years. He was 49, lived 4 blocks away, and drank coffee from the same diner every morning. He greeted teachers, fixed jammed doors, cleaned up vomit, and helped set up meetings for absentee parents. But no one really knew him, and that's how he liked it. The visiting room was his invisible territory. In there, students' issues were just numbers on forgotten paperwork. But everything shifted the day Miles showed up. A 7th grader. Quiet, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. And one thing that stood out, the kind of kid nobody expected to show up for a meeting. I remember the first time I saw Miles. It wasn't his name that stood out. It was the absence of anyone with him. Every Wednesday, the school scheduled check-ins with parents or guardians, and I'd be in the visiting room opening windows, wiping tables, setting chairs. and every week someone wouldn't show up. Sometimes the student didn't either. But Miles always came. Sat on the edge of the chair, hands folded, eyes locked on the door, like it might still open. The office would call his dad. No one ever picked up. His mother was listed as unknown. When the meeting got canceled, he'd just say, "It's okay," and head back to class. That stuck with me, because when he left, the empty chair across from him felt even hollower. He wasn't disruptive. He wasn't loud. He was just a tired kid who never asked for anything. And maybe I had been that kid once too. I started watching Miles over the following weeks, sometimes during lunch, sometimes when classes let out. It was always the same. No one sat with him, no one talked to him, no one followed him to the water fountain. I found out his dad worked nights at a 24-hour convenience store across town, and that Miles was alone most of the time. One day, I caught him staring into the staff room mirror after another canceled meeting. "Waiting for someone?" I asked. He just shrugged. I brought him a candy bar, didn't say anything, just placed it on the table. When he looked up at me startled, something in me lit up. That's when I realized this wasn't coincidence. This was purpose. And the school wouldn't do anything. But maybe I could. It was a gray Thursday, the kind of day where even your footsteps sound muffled. Miles didn't show up for first period, or second. The vice principal marked him absent, but I already knew where he was. I knew because that morning I'd quietly disabled the side door sensor. He came in with me, head down, and sat in his usual chair. I brought him a peanut butter sandwich and a juice box. I didn't lock the door. I didn't touch him. I just made it clear he wasn't leaving until I said so. He looked at me weird, but didn't protest. Then, right on time, the alarm. Full lockdown. Nobody in, nobody out. And inside, just me, Miles, and those two chairs. For the first few minutes, Miles said nothing. He fidgeted with his fingers, staring at the edge of the table. I sat across from him, pushed the juice box forward. "You're safe here," I said. "You didn't need to go to class today. They don't care about you." He didn't respond at first, then quietly, "My dad will be looking for me." I smiled, just a small one. "No, he won't. He never shows, remember?" He didn't react, just grabbed the juice and drank in silence. It was just like I remembered, the kind of boy who accepts crumbs because he's never known a full meal. I told him about my mom, how she used to sit in that exact chair and take care of everyone else. I said now it was my turn. I can show you how to leave before they break you, before you become just another forgotten file in a dusty drawer. He finally looked at me, and in that look, I saw it. Not fear, not anger, just one silent question. Why me? And in that moment, something in me faltered. But it was too late. Outside, the police footsteps echoed louder. They were close, and still, part of me just wanted one more minute. Just one more. Like maybe, just for this once, someone had finally seen me. They burst through the door. Miles jumped back, but I raised my hands before he could say anything. "It's okay," I told him. The officers shouted commands, flashed lights, asked a dozen questions at once, but I only looked at Miles. He wasn't crying, he wasn't shaking. He just stared at me like someone who finally understood something. One of the officers led him gently away. "You okay, kid?" he asked. Miles nodded. Meanwhile, two others pinned me to the wall. I didn't fight, didn't yell, didn't apologize. I just turned to look at the room one last time. The blue chair where my mother used to sit was still there, wobbly, with one crooked leg. No one noticed it. No one ever does.
As they walked me out, I thought, maybe I just wanted to go back in time, to be 7 years old again, sitting in that chair, waiting for someone who wouldn't come. Deep down, maybe I just wanted someone on the other side of the table. And that day, even just for a few hours, I had it.
If something in these stories stayed with you, if there was a moment that made your chest tighten, or a silence that felt a little too familiar, maybe you're carrying something you've never said out loud. What happened behind those classroom doors doesn't fit in a headline, but maybe, in a comment, we can make that door a little less heavy for someone still stuck behind it. Share your story, like this video, and if the world's been feeling louder than safe lately, subscribe to the channel. The next story might be just down the hall.